Shalom Aleichem. We just finished Pesach. Here is the first days of Pesach. We focus on the Exodus from Egypt, the past. The second days of Pesach, Shvi'i Shel Pesach, we focus on the future redemption, as noted in the prayers and in the Haftarah and the Torah readings. And Achron Shel Pesach, the very, very last day of Pesach, we actually focus on Moshiach intensely. Every Chabad home and synagogue and center will have or had a Moshiach Seudah, in which we actually drink 4 cups of wine, celebrating the future redemption. So why the focus on Moshiach on Pesach, which is more understandable, but why throughout the year, every year and every day, why did the Lubavitcher Rebbe encourage people to focus on Moshiach at least 3 times a day? But aside from that, what's the philosophy behind it? So we'll present 2 quick answers over here. One was from a Talmudic and biblical story, and another from NASA, from Professor Velvel Green, who was a NASA scientist who helped land the Vikings on Mars. Not are they called the Vikings? Or the Voyagers? I forgot, but whatever they're called. He helped land them on Mars. The Viking program, yeah. Okay, so firstly is that in the Talmud there's a story of some people who were traveling, and they realized that they were traveling in the woods, in the forest, and they realized that there were some robbers among them, and they engaged in conversation, and they told the robbers that they're planning to travel for a long distance ahead. They lied to them, and they were saved that way because they went off in the next turn. Where did they learn this from? They learned this lie from a biblical story where Yaakov, our forefather Jacob, he lied to his brother Esav when Esav was coming towards him with 400 men after Yaakov had stolen Esav's blessings. Esav, in a moment of insanity or reconciliation, he said to Yaakov, he says, "Come with me, travel with me home to Seir." Yaakov said, "I will meet you there." He never traveled there in the end. Yaakov didn't travel there, so why did he lie to Esav? Of course, to save your life, you are allowed to lie, and to bring peace in this world, sometimes lies are permitted and necessary too. But Yaakov didn't lie, because he actually planned to be there in Seir. The Torah tells us when Moshiach comes. When Moshiach comes, Yaakov will meet Esav in Seir. So one lesson is that Yaakov is telling us that we can learn from this biblical story is that when things aren't going perfectly well in our lives, in the here and the now, we focus on Moshiach. We focus on the long-term goal, and that is Moshiach. Long-term goal of humanity is the final, ultimate redemption, and that's Moshiach. That's one take. The question was, why focus on Moshiach? Why not just the second days of Pesach, but throughout our recent history, the Lubavitcher Rebbe encouraged, but throughout all history, since the destruction of the temple, we've been focusing on Moshiach. Why don't I just take care of my own life and sweat the small stuff? And that was one response. Another take, a little bit more fun, is from Professor Velvel Green. There's an article on Chabad.org, you can look it up. He tells about a meeting after they landed. He was a part of this team that landed some things on Mars. They were looking for the beyond, the interstellar, in between the stars, communication or connection or travel. And they gathered together a team of 30 professors, and they started brainstorming on the possibilities and the challenges. And the challenges came, and they were many. First and foremost is the food. How are you going to feed? Oh, I'm sorry. The timing. How long does it take to get to the first star, the nearest star? is 4.1 light years away. They calculated if they would travel at 100 times the speed that they could travel today, it would take them 830 years each way, there and back. Each way, 830 years. So that is obviously an intergenerational kind of a mission, and for that there were many challenges that came along with it. Some of them included the food. How are we going to feed lots of people, scores of people, for 830 years, there and back? And then there's the waste. Where would the waste go? And there's outer space challenges with the waste. And then there's all the physics that we have that govern our life here on Earth are different than outer space physics, like gravity, where there's no gravity, so there's no up, down, right, left, and there's no weightedness. So how would they teach that? It's something that you need to experience, isn't it? So the questions were how, and then finally the sociality questions about the people, the males and the females. Of course, they had to send them both to procreate and continue the generations. But then what would they do with their time? There's so much time on this little capsule. What would they do? And further on, how would they impress upon their future generations the mission and the seriousness, how sincere that the seriousness, and how vital it is to follow all the rules, to keep that old instruction manual from 1,000 years ago, or from 500 years ago, or from longer, and keep it and honor it and respect it. If it says no fire on Shabbat, then there's no fire in the rocket, because it can explode the whole thing. And if it says don't crack the window open because you won't be able to breathe or survive or live, then you can't do it. But see, for these people, hundreds of years later, it's just a dream that their great-grandparents thought of and imagined and envisioned. It's not real. Seriously, we're here. We're living here and the now. This was part of the discussion that Professor Velvel Green, who parenthetically, he was a Baal Tshuva in Minnesota. He was a professor first in Canada, then in America, and then in Israel at the Ben Gurion University for many years. He had a 30-year correspondence with the Lubavitcher Rebbe in matters relating to the compatibility of science and the Torah. So Velvel Green was a very learned man, and he tells the stories himself, many stories himself. My father knew him. I met him too. But anyway, going back to our story over here. At the same meeting, Velvel Green relates, one of the professors got up and said, we have to find some kind of precedent in our world, in our human experience here on Earth, that will help us chart this future. Jews. You have to ask the Jewish people, because they are here for thousands of years and their rituals haven't changed one iota. The exact same tefillin, exact same mezuzah, exact same rules of kosher food. Nothing changed. So we need to ask the Jews how they did it and how they do it. And maybe from that we'll be able to learn on how to send some 100 or 30 or 40 generations of humankind up to space and back successfully. So that is what Velvel Green told, and you can see this on Chabad.org. Related to this question of why we need Moshiach, perhaps we could say the same thing. We could say that if these people in the capsule didn't have their mission in mind, in the forefront of their mind, and they didn't realize that this is a mission to go to a star and bring back information, then the mission would be sabotaged. It would not work. So too, if we, Jewish people and the world, if we want our global mission, God's global purpose for mankind, for humanity, which is to make this world a peaceful and a beautiful place and bring godliness in it, then we too need to keep our compass set to the final redemption, which is Moshiach. We need to set our GPS, Moshiach, M for Moshiach. And that's the story for today. Hope everyone's well. And talking about M for Moshiach, I'll say an M for Meshulapin, an M for Mazel Tov for my daughter Chana Mishka and her husband Chali from Chabad South Bronx, who had a baby right before Pesach. The bris was on Pesach on Tuesday, and the name is Tzvi Meir. There's an M there too. So Mazel Tov for them, and may he be a light unto the Jewish people and grow up already with Moshiach. I think that's it for now. One last thing I forgot to say was that in the capsule over there, in the rocket, if the young, enthusiastic, brilliant geniuses who come generations later say, you know what, I see these controls, but they're outdated. I could do something else with that. I don't have to work the controls the same way. Basically, if they tinker with the controls, then the mission is sure to be doomed. So too, in our life, we don't tinker with our controls, with our Judaism, with our rituals. Keep them strong, and God will help us fulfill and end the mission. Seid gesund.